Hello class. Today we are going to start with the new act, Sale of Goods Act 1930. We already have finished the Indian Contract Act, and if you have noticed that in Indian Contract Act there were certain sections which were missing in the chapters. Those missing sections, they were earlier part of the Indian Contract Act, but in the year 1930, when this Sale of Goods Act was made, then those sections were abolished from that act, because in place of those provisions, which were the provisions regarding the sale of goods, a new act was made, because certain amendments were required in the sale of goods contract provisions, and instead of carrying out those amendments there, an altogether new act was framed in the year 1930. And afterwards, those sections were eliminated from the Indian Contract Act 1872. So, before proceeding with the topic of Sale of Goods Act, the first chapter, the nature of the contract of sale, let me share a few examples with you. uh, there's a person who wants to get a false set of teeth made from a dentist, and he has gone there to ask him that please prepare a false set of teeth for me. Now, what kind of contract it is? Another example I will take is a person wants to sell his potatoes which are still planted in the field, and they have to be grown. Before they are grown, he makes a deal with another person that he'll be selling 200 tons of potatoes to him later on. And before the potatoes were grown up, the crop of the potatoes got destroyed. There was nobody's fault, and the seller could not give delivery of the potatoes to the buyer, and because it was impossible because the crop has destroyed. So in this case, the question is, who shall bear the loss of these potatoes? The person who has agreed to buy it, or the person who has agreed to sell these potatoes? So the answer to all these questions will be taken up in this topic one by one. So the situation says that whenever a person wants to sell his goods to another person, some kind of complication, some kind of issue, some kind of disputes arise. And there was a need to have a uniform code of law to resolve all such issues or disputes, because of which a specific, special, full-fledged, independent sale of goods was act was made, as I shared with you earlier. It is containing the provisions which were contained in Indian Contract Act in these sections 76 to 123. If you carefully notice, section 75 is there in your topic of remedies for breach of contract. Afterwards, straight away we have special contracts. The first one being contract of indemnity, which is defined under section 124. So between 75 and 124, we don't have any sections right now, because those sections were pertaining to the contract of sales. And because of some new developments in the modern commerce, amendments were required, and to carry out these amendments, this new act was made in the year 1930. So year 1930 is the year when this act came into being, and it came into force on 1st July 1930. Now, starting with the contract of sale, the Sale of Goods Act is concerned with the contract of sale. So, although in Indian Contract Act also we have discussed about different types of contract, even the contract of sale of goods has also been discussed here and there in various examples and cases. And all those provisions, all those general provisions about any kind of contract which we have read there will be applicable here also. But in addition to those, we have some additional detailed provisions with regard to the sale of goods, which we are going to discuss here. So first of all, the definition. The contract of sale has been defined under Section 4 of Sale of Goods Act 1930. And this definition says, it is a contract. So basically it is a contract only. It is a contract whereby a person called the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to another person, buyer, for a price. So we have two persons here, a seller and a buyer. And what they are doing? They are either transferring the property or they are agreeing to transfer the property. Property here means ownership rights. So you are right now transferring the ownership of your goods to the other person, or you are agreeing that you shall be transferring this property or ownership rights of those goods to a buyer for a price. This is a basic definition of the contract of sale. And further, the contract of sale has been classified into two parts, that the sale can be an absolute sale or it can be a conditional sale. If it is an absolute sale, we also call it a sale. And if it is a conditional sale, we call it an agreement to sell. So basically, a contract of sale may be a sale or it may be an agreement to sale. So let me explain what are these two types of sale. Absolute sale here means unconditional sale, where the parties, which are the sellers and the buyers, they have not imposed any kind of restriction or any kind of condition for the sale, and the ownership of the goods, it is going to be transferred immediately from one person to the other person. Like for example, on the spot sale, you're going to a shop, you are buying something, you are paying for the goods, price is paid, goods are taken home. That is an absolute sale. There were no conditions left to be fulfilled. Ownership was given to you immediately. So that is a kind of an absolute sale. But we also may have conditional sale or agreement to sell. Conditional sale means a sale where the ownership of the goods will not be transferred immediately, like in case of absolute sale, but the ownership shall get transferred either on a future date agreed upon between the parties, or this ownership will be transferred after fulfillment of the conditions imposed. You might have imposed some conditions that after you will do this, then this ownership will transfer, like that example of potatoes. In that case, you have mentioned that potatoes are still growing up. When they will be grown up, I will be selling you 200 tons of potatoes. That means there was a condition to be fulfilled. They was yet to be grown. Or you have simply mentioned that I shall be selling you these goods which I have to purchase from abroad, and I shall be selling these goods to you 7 days from today. In that case, you are mentioning a future date. That means in both these situations, in both these examples, the ownership is not being transferred immediately, but after a future time or after some condition fulfillment. So these are said to be conditional sales, or generally we call it to be agreement to sell. So the basic difference is the stage at which the ownership is being transferred. If it is immediate transfer, when the deal is being made, it becomes absolute sale. If the transfer of ownership is not immediate one, it becomes agreement to sell. Further, any kind of contract of sale is to have these essential elements also, like we have discussed essential elements of a valid contract in the Indian Contract Act. Similarly, we have certain essential elements in case of contract of sale also. The first essential element will be all requirements of a valid contract. That means all those 10 essentials: offer and acceptance, consideration, capacity of party, free consent, etc., etc. They all will be exactly similarly applicable to a contract of sale also. Second is, there have to be two parties, and those parties are called a seller and a buyer. And we clearly understand who is a buyer, who is a seller. But what was the purpose of stating it as an essential is that a person cannot buy or sell from himself. We need to have two independent persons. Like, for example, there is a head office who's transferring certain goods to its branch. So in that case, head office and branch, they are not separate persons. They are legally they are one entity only. So in that case, we cannot say that this transfer of goods from head office to the branch is a sale. Similarly, in the case mentioned here, State of Gujarat versus Ramanlal and Company, it was a case regarding a partnership firm. This partnership firm was dissolved, and after dissolution of the partnership firm, all the goods belonging to that partnership firm, that was to be distributed among the partners. So that means the partnership dissolving partnership firm was transferring these goods, they were allocating and transferring these goods to its partners in some ratio. So it was held, it is also not a sale of goods because partners and partnership firm, they are not separate. They are one and the same thing. So we cannot call it to be a sale of goods. Third and very important essential of contract of sale is goods. Now, what is the definition of goods here? Goods here specifically means goods which are movable goods. That means the sale of immovable goods will not be part of contract of sale, because for sale of immovable property, we have another act, Transfer of Property Act. So sale of immovable property like building, shop, house, etc., they also may be sold, but their sale will not be covered under this act. That will be out of the purview of this act. So in goods here, we are going to discuss in detail the movable goods only, and these movable goods will not include two things: actionable claims and money. So we also are aware that how money is also exchange of currency is there. So that is not said to be a sale of goods because money is not regarded as goods as per section 2 subsection 7 of this act. Also, actionable claims. Now, what are actionable claims? Claims means a person has some book debts. He has to recover some money from somebody. Somebody is your debtor, and you want to recover that money from that person. So, this right of recovering that money from that person, this right cannot be sold to anybody else. So, this is called actionable claim, a claim to recover. And if you don't recover that money, you can take an action to recover that money. This right of yours cannot be a sale of goods component. Then goods will include certain things like shares and stocks will also be said to be goods. Although shares are not physically goods, we only have a paper and instrument document which shows that these are your stocks and these are your shares, but it is regarded as goods. Secondly, growing crops. Growing crops are also not movable as such, but those growing crops, they can be severed from the land. You can cut them and then you can see. Similarly, grass, trees with vegetables and fruits. So anything which is attached to the land and can be severed, can be separated, cut out, and then they can be transferred, they will also be assumed as movable goods and will fall in the category of definition of goods. Third is, like any other contract, this contract should also have a consideration, and that consideration has to be in money, and that money has to be the current currency, or which is called legal tender of that place. So you cannot give price in some very old coins or some kind of antique coins or jewelry, etc., which you have with you. You cannot pay price that way. The price has to be in money form. That means any barter sale will not be a sale of goods as per this act. Barter means goods exchange for goods. Here there must be goods exchange for money. Yes, but it is possible that you are exchanging your goods for old goods, for some old refrigerator. You are buying a new refrigerator and you are paying some part in money and some is being adjusted in the old refrigerator. That means the price can be either fully in money or it can be partly in money and partly in goods. But it cannot be wholly in goods like in barter case. Next essential is transfer of ownership. It is very essential element because sale means ownership has transferred from first person, first owner to the second person. That means the seller is going to transfer the ownership of his goods to the other person, buyer. Now this transfer of ownership may take place immediately in case of sale, or it may take place after some time in case of agreement to sell. So this is the introductory portion of the contract of sale. And here comes a very important topic. These two types that we have just discussed, sale and agreement to sell, what are the differences between these two? And please note, this difference-based question comes very frequently in the exams, and you are required to answer this only in tabular form like this and with proper basis of distinction like I am showing here. So first is transfer of ownership we have just discussed. There is immediate transfer of ownership in case of sale, and in case of agreement to sell, the transfer of ownership takes place either at a future time or on fulfillment of some conditions. Next is nature of contract. Now, if you remember, in the Indian Contract Act, first chapter, classification of contract, you have done certain types of contract. One classification was classification of contract according to performance, and that was executed and executory contract. Executed where the performance of promises has been done by both the parties, and executory where the performance of the contract is pending either from both the parties' side, or one party has done their job, their promise, and the other party is yet to perform their part of promise. So considering those two types, the nature of contract in case of sale would be executed contract, because ownership has transferred, price might also have received by you, it becomes executed, everything has been done with. But in case of the agreement to sell, the ownership is yet to be transferred after the fulfillment of conditions imposed or future date. So that way it becomes an executory contract, means contract in which performance is not yet completely done. Next difference is transfer of risk. Now, in case it is a sale, now the first column is for sale. It is not, heading is not visible here. First column is sale. Second column is agreement to sell. So, in case it is a sale, means ownership has transferred to the buyer. Who's the owner now? It is the buyer. Buyer has become the owner. And in case the goods are still lying in the custody of seller, buyer has not taken the possession of the goods, and goods lying with the seller, they get destroyed, and it was not seller's fault also. So in that case, who is going to bear this risk? So this risk will be borne by the buyer, because the buyer had become owner already. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, because the ownership has not yet transferred to the buyer, and there's a loss of goods, there's some destruction of the goods, in that case, that loss of goods will have to be borne by the seller, because he still is the owner of the goods. And this will be same even if the goods have already gone in the hands of the buyer. Buyer had got the possession of the goods, but he has not yet become owner. Still, the loss will be borne by the seller. Another difference will be consequences of breach by seller. Now, what is breach here? Breach means default. The seller has done a default. In case of sale, what default can be done by seller? Seller has transferred the ownership right. In papers and documents, ownership has been transferred in the name of the buyer, but seller has not yet given the delivery of the goods. And later on, he refuses to deliver the goods. So this will be a breach by seller. So in that case, what a buyer can do? Buyer can take a suit. He can file a suit against the seller, because goods belong to him. He is the owner, so he can recover the goods by suing, by taking a legal action against the seller. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, buyer cannot sue the seller for getting delivery of the goods, because ownership had not yet gone into the hands of buyer. So the only thing what the buyer in this situation can do is he can take a legal action only for recovery of the damages for this breach, because the default has been done, refusal has been given by the seller that he will not be selling these goods. So because seller is still the owner, he may refuse, but he will have to pay you the damages. Next is, what if the breach is done by the buyer? Now, what kind of breach can be done by a buyer? Buyer may refuse to make payment of the goods, or the buyer may refuse to take delivery of the goods. He may say that I have got better goods, I will not buy these goods, or he may say I don't have price, or I will not pay this price, or he may be paying less money. So in all these cases, what is going to be the difference? The first case is sale. In case of sale, is it possible that price was not yet paid by the buyer? When the ownership has already transferred to the buyer, then is it possible that buyer has not yet paid the price? The answer is yes. So transfer of ownership is not always related to the payment of price. Price may have been deferred. you might have agreed to pay price later on, and ownership could have been transferred immediately even without the price was paid. So considering this, in case the buyer has made this breach that he has refused to pay for the price, in that case, seller can sue him and recover his price because buyer has become the owner of the goods. He is bound to pay for the price of the goods. But in case of agreement to sell, he cannot sue him for the price because goods all belong to seller only. Buyer has not become the owner and he refuses now to pay for the price. Then you only can sue him for the damages. And the second breach, that in case buyer is refusing to take delivery, so obviously in case of sale he will not refuse to pay take delivery because he is the owner. This kind of breach will take place in case of agreement to sell. So if he is refusing to take delivery, you cannot bind him to take delivery. You can simply sue him for damages, that you are not purchasing my goods now. I will have to find out a new buyer, and the new buyer is not paying me the same money, same price. So I'm suffering a loss of price. So that loss of price will be the damages, the compensation, which you can recover from the buyer because he has done this breach. Next is right of resale. Now, who can resell or sell any goods? The owner, which in case of sale is buyer. Buyer is the owner now. In case of agreement to sell, seller is the owner so far. The buyer has not yet got any ownership right. So in this case, buyer can make the resale of the goods further because he is the owner. In this case, seller, although he has agreed to sell these goods to first buyer, he may resell the goods to somebody else. Although it is a breach. For breach, what will be done, we have discussed here. But in this case, the seller may resell the goods to somebody else, being the owner himself. Next difference is what happens in case buyer becomes insolvent and he was yet to pay the price. Now you all know that in case a person becomes insolvent, then all his property, all his rights, they are vested in a legal official called official assignee or official receiver. So now in this case, now all the control, all the legal ownership rights are with the uh, official assignee or official receiver right now. And the buyer has not paid the price. Seller is insolvent. He cannot take any legal action for recovery of the price. But the official receiver, he can recover the price himself from the buyer. And buyer cannot say that I will not be paying the price because he has already become the owner of the goods. So in this case, sorry, it is the case of the case I was telling is that of insolvency of seller. Let me once again come. This is insolvency of buyer. Buyer has become insolvent and he has not paid the price. His property, his rights are now with the official receiver. So in this case, because the buyer had already become the owner of the goods, he must be paying the price. But he now being insolvent, the price will be recovered from the official receiver. So the seller will have to file a claim with the official receiver, and official receiver will be paying you the price subject to the availability of assets with the official receiver. And because the buyer has become insolvent, that means his assets were less than his liabilities. For example, he had only 80% of the assets. So every person will be getting only proportionate dividend. 80% of your claim will only be received because that person being insolvent, only 80% of the debt were paid off. But in case it is agreement to sell, and in that case, seller was still the owner and price was not given to you, so seller can simply refuse to deliver the goods, that he will not give the goods because the price has not come and the buyer is now insolvent. But this is possible only if the goods were still lying with the seller. Next is what happens in case it is the seller who becomes insolvent. Seller becomes insolvent, goods were still lying with the seller, and now buyer wants to recover his good because he is the owner. Then the buyer can recover the goods only from the official receiver, and official receiver cannot say that these goods are belonging to seller because buyer had already become the owner. So goods will be given to the buyer. But in case of the agreement to sell, seller becomes insolvent, buyer will not be able to recover the goods even if he had already paid the price, because ownership is still with the seller. So official receiver will not give you your goods because those goods are not your goods so far. But what about the price? The price which you already have paid, you can file a claim for the recovery of the price from the official receiver, and official receiver will be giving you payment, your refund of price as per the availability of funds from the property of the insolvent seller. Next is what kind of right buyer has. In case of sale, he has right in rem. Right in rem means a right to recover, right to retain, right to use the goods against the whole world. So he has right of recovering these goods not only from the seller, because but against the whole world. You have become the owner. So nobody can question your ownership because you are the owner of the goods. Nobody means neither the seller nor anybody else in the society. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, buyers write in personam only. Right in personam means you are not yet the owner. You have right to recover these goods only from the buyer. You have not become the owner. Your only rights are against the seller, but not against the whole world, because you are not yet the owner of those goods. Another point you can add in the end is leading case or examples, respective examples for both the cases. So we are going to do so many cases further. You can mention any of the cases for these two topics. So with this we end with this difference. Very important difference. Thank you.